In the fantasy realm of the peaceful land is threatened by a disgusting evil miasma that surrounds it on all sides. It seeps in and corrupts the terrain while spawning awful creatures like an 80s John Carpenter horror movie that kill people with a single touch, and it's going to destroy all the inhabitants of the land unless you, their immortal ruler, can stop it. Luckily, your sidekick is a sentient, talking giant cup of water with a split personality that can cleanse the nastiness forever. Unfortunately, it's gonna take like 3 centuries of constant charging and focus on the cup's part in order to do it. Luckily, there's several heroes that are largely immune to the effects of the smog, meaning that they can withstand 2 or 3 hits from the creatures before they die. You must marshal these heroes to fight back the smog, sending some out to fight while others inhabit keeps and breed the next generation of heroes to do the exact same thing. This is Massive Chalice. Hey everybody, Eustace the Monk here reviewing Massive Chalice by Double Fine Studios. I was interested in trying this one out for 2 reasons. The first was that I really liked XCOM. I really quite loved it a lot, and I'm always on the lookout for games that are similar to that one. The second was that I'd really lambasted 2 of Double Fine's other early access efforts, and I was interested to see if I could find one that was actually worth playing. Check out my Hall of Shame video on Space-Based DF9 where I talk about how Double Fine really shit the bed, and I dismissively mock their game Hack and Slash as well. So, how did Massive Chalice turn out? The game is basically 2 phases, essentially tactical and strategic phases. In the strategic phase, you see a map of your besieged land, build buildings, assign research, and manage the bloodlines of the heroes. A lot of what you'll be doing here, though, is just watching the clock speed ahead in time, waiting for something to happen. The tactical phase is a turn-based battle between your heroes and the creatures of the smog. If you've played XCOM, you've played this already, and you need virtually no tutorial in order to jump in. More on this a little bit later. First, I'd like to talk about the stuff I really liked about this game. The voice acting is incredible. The 2 personalities of the Chalice are incredibly well voiced, and they advise the player on different events as they happen and narrate the tutorial for you as well. The 2 personalities of the Chalice are well written and interesting. They really are. It's really top notch.
The horns of birth. A cause for celebration indeed.
Babies have been born before today.
And it was glorious every time, was it not?
What, unbearable shrieking and smells that are even worse? That's your idea of glorious.
Yes.
And I also enjoyed the art style. I've read a lot of different reviews that said that the artwork was ugly, but I disagree. While I think that the character designs are a little goofy, I mean, look at your archer here. He's carrying a crossbow so ridiculously large that it looks like a small ballista, for Christ's sakes. The art and art style are unique, and I found it growing on me as I played. Basically, the art and voicing are top-notch, and a lot of time and money was spent on the game's look. Which brings me to the part of the game that I didn't like, and that's the gameplay itself, which is a bit of a pity since this is a video game and not a movie. Like I said, I enjoyed XCOM, but the problem with Massive Chalice is that it's too much like XCOM. Like, almost exactly like XCOM. Like, if I didn't know any better, I suspect that it was a reskinned XCOM. Every gameplay mechanic from Massive Chalice is lifted from XCOM, but without the depth or nuance that XCOM actually had. The combat is based on the 2 action point system, just like XCOM, except there's no cover system, and the maps are all single layer with 0 special features, terrain advantage, or elevation, none of that kind of thing. You won't be climbing ladders or jumping through windows in Massive Chalice. You might be wondering why you would want to take any cover in a fantasy game with roughly medieval level of technology. You might think that your heroes would just be running up to the creatures and bashing them with axes and maces. Well, you'd be wrong if you thought that, because unlike most fantasy games like this, where most fighting is done in close quarters, Massive Chalice emphasizes ranged combat just like in XCOM. Only one of the 3 initial character classes is a close-in fighter, and I found they're pretty useless most of the time given the enemy's special abilities. Yep, just like in XCOM, all the enemies have little special abilities, except in Massive Chalice, they seem to be all a capricious pain in the ass. These little kidney bean creatures steal your hit points when they hit you. The ghosts fire these energy bolts that drain your XP as well as damage you, and when they die they explode, hurting and stunning everyone around them, making them lose a turn. This makes your melee class guys not nearly as effective. There's these big lump creatures that charge you and explode, coating everything around you in gunk, damaging your armor, and leaving a corrosive puddle on the map that'll damage you if you end your turn on it. Oh, and when they die, they explode and cover everything in gunk, again making your melee class heroes not nearly as effective. There's these huge elephant creatures with cannons that shoot you and grow a carapace after you damage them, making them impossible to kill for the next turn, and making your melee heroes not nearly as effective. And there's other creatures that aid your people, or one that spits out the little kidney bean creatures while shelling you with high explosives. It's like the aliens from XCOM are back, but this time around they're here to bully a medieval fantasy society. I think the game would have been much more fun with more melee going on. I mean, you can still have slimy smog creatures and big bug creatures without having them have artillery and cannons mounted to them. Frankly, it makes it seem more like Double Fine just reskinned XCOM. The strategic view fares little better. You can advance time quickly in order to get to the next event, just like in XCOM. Unlike XCOM, however, research and building are the same task, so you can't research healing potions and build a keep at the same time, and it takes an absurd amount of time to do anything in this game. Also, for some reason repeated tasks take longer each time you do them. For example, build a keep, and the next keep you build will take longer until building one becomes prohibitively time-consuming. I can't help but to think that this was designed to simply inflate the game's difficulty. Also, your heroes will age and die, meaning that you'll need to breed new ones to keep up the fight against the smog. In each of your keeps, you can install a regent and a partner who will have babies. These babies will grow up to be your next generation of heroes, inheriting the traits of their parents. Sometimes they'll inherit the good ones. It seems like more often, though, they'll inherit the bad ones. I ended up with a keep of alchemists who were all drunks at the same time, every one of them. It was less than fun. It's actually, despite my mocking it, a fairly robust and detailed system, which is a bit of a pity as the game really encouraged you to ignore it all because the characters seem to die at random, both in and out of combat, and they need to be replaced on almost a constant basis. There's just too many petty, easily ignored details in the whole hero system. Keeping track of it all quickly feels like naming ants in an anthill. I'll give you a good example. In XCOM, when a soldier had like 3 or 4 battles, in the first battle they get promoted to the class that you choose for them, and then they've probably earned 1, maybe 2 promotions in that space of time. In Massive Chalice, a hero will have those maybe 3 battles in their entire lifetime, and then they'll die and you'll have to replace them. Doesn't really encourage me to give a shit about each individual hero. Also, unlike in XCOM, there's absolutely no customization of any of the heroes. Not even any cosmetics, and certainly not any sort of class or weaponry customization. This is partially why giving a damn about individual heroes is tough. I mean, it's not like in XCOM, where a soldier earns experience and grows in abilities, and you can customize their very appearance or change their name. Sure, your heroes earn experience, but they're gonna die of old age or be retired before they get too powerful, and they're going to need to be replaced too soon to give a damn about them. Every so often, there's a story-based decision that you have to make, but it's not terribly compelling. I guess if they happen more often, or seem to have more of an impact on the game, then they'd be more important in my mind, but I never really got the impression that they were anything but an interesting diversion. The RNG just kills you in this game, too. I mean, yeah, sure in XCOM the RNG can really clean your clock, but I always got the feeling while I was playing XCOM that I could mitigate the RNG in that game by using a good strategy. In Massive Chalice, there just isn't enough that the player can do to mitigate the RNG, and really there isn't enough for the player to do, period. For example, sometimes the smog will send its creatures into one of your keeps, and you have to send your heroes into the keep to fight them off and protect the regent and their partner, who are also controllable characters. It's very similar to the terror missions in XCOM, where you have to save civilians being attacked by the aliens. In XCOM, the civilians are all over the map, and some are tough or impossible to reach. But you can save the ones that are near you and hunt down the aliens and end the battle. In Massive Chalice, you can't do any of that. There's 2 characters that you have to protect. They're on the far side of the map, and there's a good dozen or so creatures in the way to get to them. Oh, and all the creatures know where your characters are, and they start off only really a turn or 2 away from them. There's just no options to end the battle well because of the feature-free aspect of the combat, and the player's really just being set up to fail, in my opinion. I hated those missions in Massive Chalice. They're just awful. It's just not fun. Frankly, I think this would make a decent mobile game. I mean, I bought it on the Steam sale for $2, and I frankly think I got my money's worth. I would never have dreamed of paying $20 for it. There's just too little in the game to make it a fun PC game. I get the feeling that it was rushed, but, you know, Double Fine likes to do that with its early access offerings. There's just nothing here to make me recommend it. It's XCOM with all the fun, customization, and strategy removed. If you want to play XCOM, then you should just play XCOM. Massive Chalice is a massive disappointment.